All right, folks, welcome to What's Your Story. Roman of the Empire is in the house. And listen, boy, I have a surprise for you guys because I bet you guys didn't know this. I didn't know this until recently. Dude wrote a book. Dude's got a book in the can, baby, over at Amazon. Um, well, listen, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to get to that point. But before we get to that point, Roman, thanks, my friend, for doing this. It's plugging your book was maybe on your to-do list
Thank
when
you for having me.
Pops was ringing you up to, hey, let's do this. But listen, man, a lot of folks need to be more creative, tap into that part of our spirit that does more creative things like that. So before we get too far down that, talk a little bit about how this started for you, where this came from, and your journey to get there. Let's change that.
Okay. So I've been working in creative stuff for, I want to say most of my life, but there were a couple starts and stalls. Um, when I was in school, like young man school, I had written a fantasy, just literally a handwritten fantasy story, which I was inspired by Michael Moorcock and Elric, the elf, and by J.R. Tolkien and things like that. And it was just a fun kind of thing to do. Then I did music for a very long time. I'm still doing music. Um, and then I joined the Navy, and things stopped for me creatively for a very long time. I didn't have a partner musically, and the writing thing didn't come to me until later. Um, this particular book was inspired, and it was weird. Like a lot of creators, things don't. I don't plan them at first. Something just kind of starts in your head,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll sit there for a long time until a little green thing pops out of the dirt. And for me, and this is going to be very odd, it was a song. It was a song by a semi-obscure band named Gravity Kills, and the song, it's not enough. And it's one line from the song. You know nothing about your world, but I do, and
Hmm.
that just got me thinking about older beings, things that had been around for a very long time, and the things that we think that we know in our reality are part of a
Hmm.
reality. And I expanded on that over a very long time and getting this piece done.
So were you writing while you were at sea in the military still, or is it?
So I started this book in 1997. So time machine stuff. Because I wrote at night after my shift was over. I had access to a computer,
Mhm.
and I would sit down. We'd get off about 1800 or so, and I would write until 2300, which is 11 o'clock at night for regular people. And I did that for 6 months. Uh, and sometimes you get several pages, sometimes you get a page. Um, and then we got back, and then I was home, and then I didn't have time, and then I didn't go to sea again for a very long time. So it wasn't until about 2005 that I actually was able to get back to it. So almost 10 years between when I started writing it and when I wrapped it up in that period, 2005 to 2006.
What is
I know it's
what's
it's it's a little crazy. It's not a method I recommend. It's very slow.
well, but let's talk about because I mean, like, so many people, myself included, you get an idea and you don't act on it, or you get an idea, it's just sort of festering. What made you feel like you had to constantly go back to it? Why didn't it let go?
Um, I got like I said, that line, and then it made me start thinking of the character. Who is this character? Um, who is saying these words
Hmm.
and that's where it stuck, and I couldn't get rid of it. And then the way my process was for this, I wanted to start with the characters, not with the full plot. I had that just really basic nugget, But based on the characters that I came up with, I started creating the world around these characters.
Mm.
And process wise, like I said, I'd get pages, and even complete chapters sometimes in an evening, and then sometimes you get nothing. That's just the all part of the experience. Uh, but I didn't go into it with an ending in mind. I had my kind of broad base ideas. Once I got these characters established, the most important of which is Michael, who is a fallen angel. He is not the Michael. He is a Michael, the second, in fact. Um, and then the Earth characters, a private detective named Nick Dillinger from L.A., who has the gift of sight, though he is not particularly fond of his gift of sight. And his good friend Henry Darvin, who is a police detective in San Diego, he's the everyman in the story. He's the normal dude.
Hmm. It's really fascinating, and I don't even know what brought it to light that I knew you did the book, and I'm like, oh, because I caught, again, pick up breadcrumbs sometimes that it was this long journey for you. It's like this thing you hastily
Yes.
you're working on, but then you got to set it aside. Work on life, you got to set it aside, and it's like that is so much. I think of where people are right now, and will be tomorrow, and have been.
Mm-hmm.
What is one of your words of advice that you could give to someone who's like constantly it's gnawing at their spirit, which I think is what I always describe. When that story is still gnawing at your spirit, what do you do? How do you find time? How do you get one more page done?
I think what is Mr. Scott said, if it's important, you make the time.
Mm,
And that doesn't mean it's convenient, because it often is not. In my everyday life now, trying to do creative things is very often not convenient. Um, but the most important aspect is sitting down and writing every day. Whether you sit and write for 10 minutes, you sit and write for an hour if you're able to, or more or longer if you can.
right.
And it doesn't mean you're creating something great every day. Some days you've got what you're building on from yesterday, and you write 5 pages and they are crap. And you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to save those. Or maybe you save them in a folder. It's an idea you can come back to for something else later on.
Mm-hmm.
But the hardest thing is literally getting at that keyboard every day and squeezing some ideas out of your head. Um, it's always nice if you are able to do it. And I go back to that because I understand unless this is all you do, you have other things that are, I don't want to say disruptive, because that seems to be like a bad term, that impede your writing, because in real life will often, it has to take priority. I'm retired now, yet my everyday life still overrides other things that I want to do. But if you can, again, find a good stopping point.
Hmm.
A good stopping point is a great start off point. So if you're able to have that closure at the end of the day previously, it's easier to find a good start point that next day. So you're not just like, okay, jumping off blindly. But even then, sometimes you are, because going from chapter to chapter, you're not always going to be staying within that linear spot. You're jumping off to different locations, different worlds sometimes. So
Is it the habit forming of the writing everyday process that's so important? Like just like we develop negative habits, is like trying to develop a positive habit of trying to
yes,
say, I'm going to, quote, make time. I'm going to find a way to carve out, like you said, 10 minutes to an hour, 2 hours, whatever you can sacrifice. And I say sacrifice, meaning you have responsibilities. You have to be a steward of time. You have to be a steward of your responsibilities,
yes,
especially when things like this are like a side job, a side dream, if you will. Because nothing,
yes.
I don't think Roman is retired because Failures of the Fallen has blown
Certainly
up his
not.
bank account. And but at the same time, I love when I talked to Copa. Copa talked about
Yes.
completing the story. Like once it starts, just if you can just complete it, you're so far ahead of the game. You've accomplished so much more, and I think there's so much to that.
No, absolutely. So this, and I didn't go into this thing with a certain length in mind. When the end was coming for these characters in this story, I knew when it was coming. So you end up with about a 300-page novel is where what it worked out to be. But yeah, it's the discipline. It's just like anything else. It's sounds silly to say that, but it's true. I work out every day, even when I don't want to. uh, but writing is the same kind of thing. So, like I said, you sit down your keyboard and you try to bang out a paragraph or two, or a page or two, or more. But it's if you don't sit down at the keyboard, you're never going to do it. And as soon as you don't sit down at the keyboard once, it's so easy to not sit down at the keyboard again. But it's easy to speak in those terms when you have the time to do it. Like I said, that's why this book was written the way it was. My home life is like everyone else's, kind of a beehive. So the idea of me sitting in the kitchen trying to carve this thing out with all the activities going around is impossible. You need that isolation time. So if you can find that in your life, then that's when you have to take, those magic moments. And if you can do it at the same time every day, that's also better.
The routine.
That's the routine. Routine is important. It says, part of the military life. That's what, you get used to that, and it does help.
Is it a lonely process for you?
Yes. So it's a lonely yes, because I have to do it by myself, and I don't. There every now and then there's something I will go out to somebody else with, because I don't have a certain knowledge or certain things in this book I didn't know about. I don't know about how police forensics work. So I found someone who could give me an insight into forensics, how an autopsy is done, the information that you get from an autopsy, how that autopsy is written, things like that. And other things, it's just a lot of research projects. I did a ton of work for this book. I delve into Catholicism, some ancient Persian religions. Every angel or demon you get in this book is an angel or demon. They're out there in some kind of mythos. I didn't pull them out of thin air. And some of them, they have jobs. You get to meet Hell's bookkeeper, Hell's architect, these beings who have Hell's armor, the one who made all the weapons for the war. All these fascinating beings, many of which you probably didn't know existed. I didn't know most of them before I got into this and started, building the populace of hell and heaven, and then the few weirdos wandering around San Diego that I know.
What is because the moment that you felt like you could put it to bed and hit publish and it's boom, it's done?
You reread a lot, and even after that, even now, and I'm mildly embarrassed, but when you self-publish, you generally self-edit as well. Self-editing is one of the hardest things in the world to do, because you see your work as you intended your work, not necessarily as your work is. So you're going to reread a work a lot, and then someone, if you can get an editor, that's obviously better if you have the budget and time for that. Or someone you trust who is very good with two things: contextual writing. Does this make sense? And two, just plain old regular grammar. It's also a big deal. So, yeah, the rereading, you kind of have to get to a point and you just have to stop. Otherwise, you will reread this to death. It's just like any other project. When you're writing music, you can never be done with this song. That kind of just you have to just like, okay, I need to be done with this, and then push.
What was the first reaction from like Mrs. Empire or people that are the closest to you? Like,
she
this is actually done.
She won't read it. She's never read it. It freaks her out too much. I go into some really, and it's funny when my friends who have purchased this, I have to tell them when they're reading it, remember, it's a book. This is just a story. This is not my psyche. Because I do go to some very dark places in this book. It's part of the horror story that is,
Mhm.
the crux of it. Um, but people are like, I've gotten very good reactions, and I don't want to say they aren't bad reactions. People are just think it's odd that these ideas sprung from this head.
Yeah, because I got to be honest, it doesn't match the you peppy persona that's talking pop culture and movies and blah blah blah. You're always full of excitement and energy and talking with your hands and blah blah blah. And it's like dark, heavy, demonic, violent. Oh boy, okay, wait, that's in his head. Like, okay, is there a secret passage behind those action figures I should be concerned about? Like,
It's legitimate. It's a legitimate concern. Well, I mean, and as soon as you open the book and you start reading, you are already. I mean, you're on a dark path immediately.
Hmm.
It starts with a series of child abductions, which is not certainly not a light topic, um, and that's your launch off point. The why this is happening is you know the key to everything, as they say.
Okay. Well, the link is there, folks. Again, this is uh, this is one of our fellow creators here, and you want to do your part to get that. The link's there in the description for you to get a copy. There's a physical copy you can have them print for you and send, as well as the Kindle option. So, Failures of the Fallen. Yes, yes. It is. I got to be honest, man. I was so blown away and happy for you that this, you know, you put the baby to bed. It got done. You know what I mean? It's like there's something I can say about the relief when you're writing or working on a project, or you're researching, you're doing all these different things, and then it's like there's something there.
Yes,
How that?
when I wrote the last words prior to the 9,000 rereads, I was just like, "That's it, that's it." And
Mm,
like I said, and I knew when it was there, it was done. I did write an epilogue, but as far as the primary storyline, it was done, and then I wanted to go through and just one little nugget about what's going on with him now. Um, so
is
yeah, yes,
there
it was.
an emotional down moment when you're done, like almost like a writer's depression?
No, I was actually I was very relieved to
Mm,
finally after the many years of it was really about two solid years of writing, but it was a lot longer in real time from start to finish to actually getting it out there to the people, because self-publishing didn't exist and I wasn't in a position that I could go farm my work out to an editor. I just didn't have, so it sat on a hard drive
hmm.
for a decade or so before and I finally got it out after rereading it again for content because times change and sometimes you have to change your book to match them.
That's true. So, is there a mentor or someone who you're like, this person really kind of made this happen in a way, or kind of helped inspire you?
um in real life, no, unfortunately. I was because I didn't remember, I wasn't a kid when I started this project. Well, by this version of me's term, I was a kid, but I was in my late 20s when I started the project, and then in my late or mid 30s by the time I finished it. So I wasn't in school. I'm
Hmm.
not friends with other authors. I am friends with a ton of musicians, um, but no other writers. A lot of what inspired me to get into writing though wasn't so much a person but a process. When I did go to college later on, um, it put me because you're never really sure about what you can do until someone else reads your stuff.
Hmm.
So you might think you're the best writer in the world, then you turn in your paper for whatever, and they're like, "Dude, what are you doing? Did you just climb out of the cave?" But I did very, very well on these things. I'm like, okay, maybe this is something I can do, and so that was also a catalyst. Like I said, it wasn't a particular professor; it was just the process.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I can agree that when you start figuring out that you can say words of encouragement, even if it's something that's pretty faceless, like a college class or something like that, just to get,
Yeah.
get positive scores, positive feedback. You're like, oh, I can do this. It's funny you say that because I remember I literally don't have a ton of those I could put my finger on, or like yourself, maybe a professor or whatever. But I remember I had one little, again, early English, like early college English. And I wrote this little, it's like a 5-page or 10-page, something was pretty short by normal standards, right? And I remember writing about my car and the color of the car and how the car smelled and all these different things. I remember I had a coworker who had been in English major, I think, and he proofread it and it gave me all this positive. That's really great. And then when I got this amazing score back, I was like, oh wait, I'm actually not terrible at this. Like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like I didn't know. Like you said, you don't really know. You don't have a thermometer, right? You don't
Right.
really know where you're at. So
No, not unless you are in like a community like that. And you do, and writers hang out with writers,
yeah.
musicians hang out with musicians, weirdos on the internet hang out with weirdos on the internet. And so you work with what you know, and sometimes your toolbox doesn't have the precise thing that you need. So you draw from, and like I said, for me, for could I write came from
Hmm.
college, and I didn't go to college right out of high school like regular people. I went much later. It was during my time in the Navy that I got my degree.
Who's been your best critic?
Hmm. I it's funny, that would actually be probably my former boss, who was there during the first half of the writing of the book. Um, he was the guy who was in charge of the shop, and he was kind enough to let me do what I did. He didn't have to let me stay down there at night. And I was like, look, I'm just going to stay out of the way. I'm going to sit here on my keyboard and I'm going to churn this stuff out. And he was very good because it wasn't all hugs and roses, because I actually did let him proof things for me as I was going along with the story, but then he always wanted more. It's like, hey,
Hmm.
so you got more, you got more, you got more. And he was, if it weren't for him, this thing wouldn't exist.
Hmm. Okay. That's hard to find though. That's hard to find, right?
Well, he was a captive audience, to be fair.
Well, okay, but but you have someone who can at least give you not only honest feedback, but has sort of like like you said, toolbox, the
Yes.
intellectual capacity to be a fair critic and not just a yes man or a naysayer. Like I've had both. I remember I wrote something and it was like, well, nothing happens. Like they didn't get it. It was like more of an observational piece, kind of like Seinfeld humor, right? Not everybody likes Seinfeld humor. It's like, it's not
Yes.
that something happens, it's the observational comedy, the observation of an event or something that can be an interesting story, an interesting, almost like a document of that moment. But not everybody, you know, you can luck into the right situation. But it's, maybe that's not a mentor to you per se, but it definitely is someone who definitely helped manifest your book. That's for sure.
Yes.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's
Like I
cool.
said, we're not for him allowing me the time, which was the one most important thing, and two, giving me feedback on events, or like I said, if things didn't work or if they did, that was where I could move forward from or change things if I needed to. And this book, and I'm going to say very clearly, is not for everyone. There are things in this book which are really disturbing. So, and so if you get skeeved out, this may not be for you. But if you like a weird horror story that works the real world into the other side of the veil,
Hmm.
where you're
Hmm.
dealing with angels and demons
Supernatural. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's more than just that in this world, that I've created. So you get to meet some interesting beings.
Okay. Uh, so not the writing part, but maybe like the
Mhm.
publishing part. What's something that Roman now would say to the younger Roman to make this an easier process?
Wait 20 years until the internet allows for it. It's for people who want to do this now. You can do it. It's the process isn't that hard. In fact, there are things that are available now that weren't available when I shoved this thing over to Amazon.
Hmm.
Getting your hard copies made is a lot easier. In fact, there are a lot more self-publishing houses or publishing houses that will accept your work and you're going to be paying for it. But
Mhm.
now you have now you have editors available. You don't just have the bare bones of doing the 99% of the publishing work as well as all of the writing work. So look for those because they're out there. You don't need to just use Amazon. There are a lot more resources now, and it's not hard, but um, if you can get your stuff together in a way that you can present it to an actual publisher, if you have that kind of, again, it all goes back to time. Time is the great equalizer. If you have that kind of time, so you can get it on a bookshelf in a bookstore, in all of the big places in the world. I did this because I wanted to complete a novel,
Mhm.
and that's why I it's free on Kindle and it's only like a buck in just to buy the 300 pages and read it. Because I wanted to complete this creative process and tell a good story while doing it. Um, I had no dreams of grandeur while writing this. This was something that I personally wanted to accomplish.
Is there still more coming? Is there still like that story, little
It's
note? There's like a notepad. There's a
I've
few days where Last of Us is over, so now Roman's got some
I
time.
know now I have time
He's
in the
over here
morning.
doing a yeah.
So I was on a show with Zach's, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. My sense of time is terrible. When it was a bunch of other type of creators, not just the content stuff that we do now, but
Mhm.
musicians, authors, comic book folks, and that really got me thinking again. And I dug out my Book of Angels
Mm.
again with all my old page marks on it, and I'm like, okay, I need to revisit you guys. And I have page one of the follow up, the Feast of the Fallen, written.
Oh,
So
there you go, folks. I don't know if
hopefully
that's
it won't take me 10 years to churn it out.
don't know if that's an exclusive or not, but there you go. Feast of the Fallen. That's great to know that it's so once you get the bug,
It is.
it starts to run.
I need two, maybe three of me though to complete all the projects that I have going on.
Don't we all,
Uh,
brother? Don't we
between
all?
YouTube, my music stuff, which has actually gotten rolling again after about a 7 year hiatus, and now really wanting to start writing again. It's a time. Time is not your friend. As long as you're doing something you enjoy and have fun with. Again, will this book ever make it out there? Who knows? I don't know the answer to that. Do I enjoy writing it? Am I having fun with that? Sure, I am. Just like the music or the YouTube stuff. If I'm not creating, I'm going to go nuts and I'm going to take my family with me. So,
Well, it's already out there, folks. The link is there in the description, so you can get yourself a copy. Like I said, it's next to nothing. You can just basically get it and be a part of what happened in Roman's head, like good, bad, dark, and ugly, whatever it may be. It's up to you to decide. So, it has been interesting to find out that my fellow creator here had penned a book and be able to have him on to talk about it. Hopefully, you can find some encouraging words during our conversation that will encourage you to, tap on some keys and put pen to paper, do whatever you got to do. Because I agree, it's never been easier, but it's also like the hardest part is just doing it, like the
yes,
discipline, the
100%.
work of doing it. Because even if you had to go, I'm really going to need an editor. At least that's a hurdle that you can try to cross when you get there. Like getting it together is one thing.
Yes.
Trying to figure out how to whip it in the driveway or getting a little bit of help at the end, that's actually a more manageable process to kind of navigate. So, awesome. Thank you so much, my friend. We're glad we were able to
Thank
fit
you.
this in and do this. It's been kind of cool to, again, talk about stuff that can encourage other folks. Because, like you said, it's when you're creative, you have that in you. It's kind of hard. It's not like you don't do well if it turns off.
No, you don't.
I don't do well when it's turned off. I don't do well at all. I break. So, well, folks, if you've enjoyed this, feel free to check out Roman's channel. Tons of great content. Thursday show is amazing. You got to just it's must see. It's must see too. It's must see too. And obviously the links are there for the book, and you can check out Roman. Thank you again, my brother. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun to talk about. So I really appreciate you letting me have the opportunity to go on about it.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you, folks, for watching What's Your Story. Appreciate it. Talk to you guys next week, every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be talking to somebody about something coming up.